Hey everybody, welcome back to accounting. You are officially done with the conversion process, and we are now going to look at what we call the time value of money. Many of you guys are in calc. I'm pretty sure it's calc that does it. Maybe it's pre-calc, but they do some time value of money stuff, or at least they used to. So for some of you, this will be really easy. The great thing about this is that I don't ever make you do any of the actual math problems. We just use calculators that are available online super easily, but you still need to figure out how to put everything into the calculator and why and what. And so that's what we're going to focus on. Um, Kind of the plan for today is we are going to look at the rate of the return and a little question on that. We're going to look at types of risk, and that's actually going to be your homework. We're going to do a risk evaluation, and then we're going to look at the difference between simple and compound interest. Big takeaways from today. You should know the difference between return of investment and return on investment, which really isn't that complicated. One is a return of your initial investment, and return on investment is on top of that. We're going to look at the what is the rate of return and risks, what your expected rate of return is, and simple versus compound interest. So, um, rate of return matters. Everybody wants to know what they're getting for their investment. If you told people that they were going to return $50,000, like make $50,000 on investment, most people say that sounds great. But what if they have to put $50 million in to get that $50,000? Well, that's not a great return on your investment, especially if it's something super risky and they could lose everything. And so that's what you always have to know is you can't think of things in terms of dollar values. You have to think of things in terms of percentages. So the return of the investment is when you get your initial money back. The return on investment is when you get more or less money back. So it's really easy to calculate this. It's the amount of return that you got on the investment and the amount that you initially invested. So where this messes people up is like, let's say you invested $100 and you got $102 back. Your return on investment is not $102, it's $2. So the $2 that you got on top of your initial investment. So it would be 2 divided by 100 equals a 2% rate of return. And it is possible to go negative. So it doesn't include the negative number while you're doing the math, but you just know that it's negative. So that 20 here, so if you lost $20, so you had a negative $20 return divided by the $1,000 into initial investment is a negative 2% return. So a lot of people right now are getting negative returns on investments, but it's just something to know. It's something that people talk about in every single business of every single anything that you're ever going to do in business. It's just something that you should know. So again, if you're calculating this at home, you can pause it here and try it out for a second. You put in $1,100, you get $2,000 back. How would you calculate that? So it's $900, which was your return on investment, divided by the $1,100. So how I got that again is I got $2,000 back minus my initial investment, which is 1,100 is 900, divided by, so that's my return on the investment, divided by my initial investment, which is 1,100, and it gives me the percentage of return. I don't know it. I don't have it on top of my head, and I'm not getting a calculator. I'm sorry. Um, so what is risk? Risk is the chance that you have an unfavorable outcome. Um, what people don't think about when they invest in the stock market is there's a tremendous amount of risk involved with that. Look at what's going on in the economy right now. You know, things have tanked hard, and that's a risk that you get when you invest. When you invest in a company, it may look like the safest thing ever. I mean, think about all the people that used to have J.C. Penney stock, and now it's garbage. Like it looks like these are great, can't fail, always going to be their companies, and the next thing you know, they're gone. That is risk. Um, there's different types of risk. There's inflation risk, which is the idea that prices change. Inflation is when you get less for your money than you initially could. So you go to the grocery store and you buy $100 worth of stuff. Next year, you'll have less stuff in your shopping cart. That's just the way it goes. In the United States, we have inflation at about 3% a year. So when you put that $100 into the bank account, in your bank account that your grandma gave you, next year it purchases about $97 worth of stuff. So every year your money becomes worth less and less and less. And in some places, it spins out of control. In the Weimar Republic after World War One in Germany, it literally got to the point where it was cheaper to wallpaper your house with $100 marks, like $100 bills, than it was to buy wallpaper because your money was so worthless. People would get paid at lunchtime, and then they would go out during their lunch and buy groceries in like a wheelbarrow full of cash, because if they waited until the end of the day, their money was worth half as much. That's how bad inflation was there. That's called hyperinflation. Um, there's also business risk. Businesses fail, and there's liquidity risk. Um, you can invest in stuff and not have the cash when you need it. So you may go out and buy like a hot pink Lamborghini with your face on it, and it's still worth a lot, but it's not very liquid. Not everybody's going to want to buy a hot pink Lamborghini with your face painted on the hood. It's very valuable, but it's hard to turn into cash. It has low liquidity. And so those are different types of risks that you have. Your homework is going to be finding different examples of those risks in real life. So for each one, you'll have to find one. So for inflation risk, for example, I did hyperinflation in Zimbabwe, and this is an example of the currency that they had. Eventually, they had to keep making new money because it became so worthless. So this is a $1 trillion bill because, and it's worth about the same amount as what we consider a $100 bill. And it used to be that it was about the same value as that of the United States dollar, but because of such bad inflation, it just blew up. It's nuts. Um, how are risk and return related? So everybody has a return that you expect. Nobody makes any investment without knowing that they're going to get something back. If you didn't have any idea what you were going to get back, you wouldn't do it. You have an expected amount that you're going to get returned. And what you do is subconsciously, without knowing it, you always look at the risk and what the reward is. We do this incessantly. You drop that French fry on the ground at home, you mentally make a note and you say, like, all right, risk, I get food poisoning. Reward, I get to eat the French fry. Depends on how hungry you are. You drop that French fry at school, you do the same thing. There's still the same reward there, a French fry, but the risk is infinitely greater that you get herpes or something else weird like that. It changes our mind. And when we look at this, it, it's it gets a little bit different. So if we looked at it, so this is our reward up here. I'm doing this on a pad. Look at that. That's not a bad R. You need for if your risk is greater, you need a bigger reward. If the risk is very low, you need a small reward. So, in short, you don't get any money for putting your money in the bank and like just having it sit there in your checking account because there's almost no risk. Like, there's very, 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 very little risk. Now, if I was going to loan money to say Cole Dasher, I would need a huge reward. Like, I am not going to loan money to Cole Dasher unless I'm going to get 30 times my money back. Kendall McFarland, on the other hand, Kendall, I probably would give her $1 and say, you just give me 90 cents back, because it's safer than if I have the money myself. You can look at your own risk on this website. I'll throw it up on the post. You don't have to do it. It's a little bit different for you guys because like you don't have retirement savings or money at all. But it is kind of just cool to see what you're at, like where you are, and different things like that. Um, so when we go through and we see like different rates of return, you can get a couple of different types of return. You can get what we call simple interest and compound interest. Simple interest is like you put $100 in the bank and it has 5% interest. Simple interest says you get $5 every year. No matter what, $5, $5. If there's $100 in the bank, you get $5. $100 in the bank, $5. That is simple interest. Like whatever the principal times the rate times the time. Compound interest is different. Compound interest is getting interest on your interest. So that first year, your simple interest and your compound interest are exactly the same. The next year, instead of saying that $100 and then $5, you get interest on the $105. And the following year, you get interest on the $105 and like 7 cents or whatever it is, $106, whatever. And then it keeps building. You keep getting interest on top of your interest. So there's a little video here if you're struggling with this, and I'll post this up on the assignment as well for you to view. It's pretty good. It's pretty short. Um, if I was going to draw this for you guys, simple interest looks like this. We'll make simple interest yellow. Simple interest is a relatively straight line. Now, I want you to think of that as being straight. I'm sorry, I am not good with a mouse. I'm going to make this compound interest the same. So it starts off the same and it moves in lockstep, but then all of a sudden you're getting interest on the interest and it keeps growing. And then next thing you know, you're getting very exponential interest there. So like you get exponential growth, like it moves up at a very steep slope. The slope of this line here does not change for simple interest. It's always the exact same slope. Whereas the slope of this line changes greatly. This is a real life example that I made. Compound interest versus simple interest, 8% a year for 40 years. Within, you can see at the very beginning, it starts off the same. You can see right here. They're the same. As you go forward, the slope doesn't change for simple interest, but you get that exponential growth and it's going to move further up and up and up on the compound interest. You do this with the stock market. That's why it's so important that people invest early. So you can always test these things out on these different calculators. This website I'll throw in there is a website we're going to be using a lot. It's the interest calculator. There's different ones. I'll post them as we need them. Make sure that you take a look at this website, throw a couple of different examples in there to see what you get. It's not for a grade or anything like that, but it's just something that's good to know. Your assignment for this week is to find an example for the 3 different types of risk that people can undertake. So you're going to find a real world example and you're going to explain what happened in that real world example. So literally it should be like, inflation risk and then a real world example and then you're going to explain what happened. And then the next one, it'll go down to like business risk, real world example, explain what happened. Next one is going to be liquidity risk, real world example, then you'll explain it. So you'll just make a Google Doc and submit it there. So you're going to have to do a little bit of Google searching, see what's out there, post it in there, and go from there. If you guys have any other questions, let me know.